Comparison is the thief of joy. Theodore Roosevelt. Think about that for a moment. Comparison is the thief of joy. Today I want to talk to you about that, why we do it, how we do it, and the impact it has on us. Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thanks for joining me. So that quote is really pretty simple in a lot of ways. It's also quite profound because when you think about it, comparison is something that we do quite often. We do it somewhat naturally, automatically. We don't necessarily sit and think about what are the ways that I can compare myself to somebody today, but we do it. And part of the reason that we do it is that we are searching for ways that we can either feel better about ourselves or reinforce something that we already believe. And for the people watching this video, there's a good chance it's much more the second option. Because when you think about it, when you compare yourself to somebody, and you may not even recognize how often you do this, but when you compare yourself to somebody, how often do you end up feeling worse about yourself? How often do you feel self-critical or shame even? And you could be comparing yourself in so many different ways. We will find a way to compare ourselves to somebody in some pretty crazy ways. And we do that so that we can reinforce the ideas that we already hold about who we are or what's possible for our lives. And we really do it so automatically and frequently. I have been a huge comparer, and I recognize that I did it, but I didn't really recognize the impact that it had on me. That every time I did it, it reinforced something that I believed about myself, often that I wasn't good enough. But I didn't realize that it was reinforcing it. I just thought it was proof that I wasn't good enough. But the ways that we compare ourselves to others are never really based in reality. Because when we compare ourselves in one particular way, for example, looking at somebody and thinking that their life looks really great on the outside, like what success is defined as. We look at that and we might look particularly at the kind of job they have or the money that they make. And we look at that and then look at ourselves and feel like we're not where we want to be. And we focus on that one thing and think, well, they're better than I am, or I'll never be able to get to that point, or something along that line, which reinforces that you're not good enough. You're not as good as, that other people are better than you. Other people are more deserving than you. Other people work harder than you. Like there's so many different things that you can come up with. And maybe it's a lot of those things at once. But you're comparing one thing that, in all truthfulness, may not even be true. That person's life may look like the definition of success. But in reality, if you were to look at their financial statements, you might be shocked. Of course, there are successful and wealthy people out there, but a lot of the people that you are going to compare yourself to, it's not the whole picture. Because while it may look a particular way, it could be that everything that they have, or at least everything that they show you, is on credit. They may be in so much debt that they'll never be able to get out of it. But when you're in that place of comparison, you're not able to really consider that. The other thing that you're not able to consider, because again, you're picking that one thing or the biggest thing that you feel like is so different from you. So the other thing that you often will miss is that even if they are really successful in their career, what does the rest of their life look like? Right? Because they may have a great career, or they may make a lot of money. They may have really great, nice things. But are they happy? Do they trust the people around them to really want to be their friend or partner? Or do they fear and worry that people only want to be around them because of their money? Do they rest and sleep peacefully at night? Or are they so stressed out about having to continue to make that amount of money so that they don't lose everything, so they don't feel shame when people see the truth of who they are? But when we're in that mode of comparison, we're not able to really see the full picture. And anytime we compare ourselves, like really think about this. How often do you compare yourself that you end up feeling better about yourself? Or even okay about yourself? I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but there's a good chance that it probably doesn't. And if you are somebody who tends to feel better about yourself, it's possible that you've done a lot of healing. It's also possible that it could be that could be a little bit of an emotional, self-protective thing that's going on there. So you may be able to momentarily feel better about yourself about something, but it probably doesn't last. And I remember, like I said, I've compared myself in any possible way to anybody and can find a way to feel worse about myself. Fortunately, it's gotten a whole lot better. For quite a while now, it's been better, but I still get caught up in it in different ways. And years ago, when I was in my undergraduate program, there was somebody that I became friends with. We met in community college. And there were so many things about her or her life that I compared myself to. Always feeling bad about myself because she did really well in school. She had had a really good paying job, but there were some things that happened that were really not good. And she was getting paid to stay home. And then she sued them and got a lot of money and was able to go to school. And I think they were even paying for that. I don't remember exactly. And meanwhile, we didn't have really any money. I had children and a husband at home to take care of. My youngest was probably at that time in like first or second grade. I didn't do very well in school. Like she got pretty much straight A's. I did not. She had so much freedom in her life. She struggled a lot. And I'll share more of that in a moment. But she had all this freedom. She had a nice house that she chose, she bought it. She had 2 cars. Like there was all this stuff that I compared myself against. And of course, I always felt worse. And of course, she had blonde hair and blue eyes and very thin. And at the time I was fairly thin as well. But of course, that didn't matter because I would find ways to compare myself and feel worse about myself. So it didn't matter that I really probably might have actually been as thin as she was at that time. I don't really remember for sure. I just saw her and the idea of blonde hair and blue eyes and saw that that was somehow better. And I knew her for, I don't know, a few years, 4 years or something like that. We were really close, but it wasn't a very healthy friendship. But there came a time when, and I don't remember exactly what it was now because this was quite a long time ago, but I was in that place where I was comparing something. And I think it had to do with kind of the time freedom that she had to be able to do well in school, to spend the time that she needed to spend going, doing homework and research and all of that stuff. And I remember having this moment. So I had started healing at this point, but I remember having this moment, and again, I don't remember exactly what it was, where I had this recognition. So I'm in the midst of comparing myself in a way that doesn't feel good. And then suddenly I had this awareness that I wouldn't want to trade places with her, that I actually wouldn't want her life. And there were many reasons for that. And in that moment, the comparison didn't completely stop. But I was able to connect to the whole picture. And yes, there were a lot of things about her life that I kind of envied. That freedom was a big one. I was a mom at barely 17 years old. But then in that moment, recognizing that I would not trade my life for hers, it helped me recognize and feel in my body the sense of, I actually feel better being here. Yeah, all these things I can compare and maybe even envy, but when I look at the whole picture, this feels much better. And after that, like I said, I still compared myself on occasion, but I did it less. And that helped me actually begin to recognize other things when I would compare myself to other people or other situations. And it created an incredible shift within me. It helped with gratitude. And not just gratitude generally, though that was a part of it, but it also helped with gratitude in helping me recognize the things that can sometimes stress you out, the things that you might even compare in some way, and find that there are good pieces of that too. Like, for example, when I would compare her freedom that she had, both financially and time, and what that created for her, because that was a big thing for me, because that was kind of quite different than where I was at that particular time. But looking at the whole picture, part of the reason that I didn't have as much financial freedom, not solely for sure, but part of the reason was that there were 4 of us in my family and she just had her. And that makes a difference, right? And so when I thought about that, and I thought, well, I love my family and I wouldn't want to not have my family. So that made a difference in my family. I'm talking about my husband and my children. And then even the time, and I thought, yes, there are times that I wish that I could just close myself off and not have all that responsibility. Actually, responsibility was a big part of that too. Not have all that responsibility so I could just focus on work so that I could do well, because I thought if I could do well in school that I would feel better about myself, that would prove that I was worthy. Of course, that isn't true, but that's what I held on to at the time. And so that comparison and even that envy was there quite often, that she had no real responsibility for other people, at least, or work or anything else, and other than school. But in thinking about that and thinking about that responsibility again, well, I love my family. I enjoy my family. I have fun with my family, as much fun as I was capable of having at that time anyway. And I know that she struggles a lot with being alone. So while I might feel envious at times and compare myself to her and her good grades, and I wasn't doing horribly, but I definitely wasn't getting straight A's, it helped me really connect to what I did have. And in all reality, she compared herself against at times and felt worse about herself and her life. So really think about that. And I think this is something that so many people can relate to on some level. So I spent all that time, a few years, comparing myself to her, different aspects of her life, feeling bad about myself, feeling envious of her, and recognizing that there was really no reason to, that it wasn't really based in truth. And then recognizing that the very things that I felt envious of her for, so she had this lack of responsibility and I had all this responsibility. She envied that of me. Of course, she didn't think about it in terms of responsibility, but she thought about it as not having her own family. But again, how we think about it is based in where we see our lack. So she wasn't comparing, oh, I don't have any responsibility, and look, she's got all this responsibility and I want that. No, but that's how I was comparing, right? In the opposite way. For her, it was comparing, I don't have anybody in my life and maybe I'll never have children. So she was feeling bad. And we do this all the time. All the time. Whether it's about somebody's lifestyle, their family life, being single instead of being partnered, being partnered instead of being single. Or maybe I said that the same way, but I think you know what I mean. We compare in terms of experiences. When you're young, you compare yourself to older people and have some envy maybe in that way. When you're old, you compare yourself to younger people and maybe envy in that direction. We do this all the time. All the time. And when we do not believe in our own worthiness, when we do not accept our imperfection, when we're not able to practice self-compassion and release the shame, we continue to do that. I'd really like you to see if you can pay attention to how often you compare yourself to somebody. It could be a complete stranger. You could be at a traffic light and look over at the person next to you and compare yourself in some way. Right? I'm sure you can relate. I know I've done that. And we make up stories about their life. Stories that we have no idea what the reality is. But in order for us to compare ourselves to them in a way that will reinforce what we already believe about ourselves, we kind of need to make up that story. And the thing about sitting in a traffic light came to mind because years ago I had a client who was telling me, and I don't remember the whole story, but that happened to her. She was at the stoplight and there was, I think, the woman in a car next to her. I think it might have been kind of a nice car. And the woman, I think, might have been singing. I could tell she was singing in her car. And my client looked at her and compared herself to her in some way. And I don't remember what it was exactly, but felt worse about herself because in her mind, she made up a story about this woman's life. I don't remember what that story was, but one example could be if the woman is singing, then you might imagine that she's happy. You might imagine that she has a great singing voice. You might imagine that she's had a great day or has a great life. You could look at her car and see it's kind of a nice car and assume that she maybe has a lot of money and therefore a lot of ease in her life. Maybe even has a lot of friends and goes out and goes on vacations. Like you could literally make up a whole documentary about this woman's life without knowing anything about her. And then you feel worse about yourself. You might even say to yourself, I'll never be able to have that. You might even notice saying to yourself, I don't deserve that. But it's not true. But every time you compare yourself and you feel worse about yourself, you are reinforcing those core beliefs. You're creating judgment and criticism toward yourself, because not only are you kind of subconsciously reinforcing those beliefs, but you're literally searching for a way to see yourself as less than. And really pay attention. So this is what I'd like you to try to do. You might be able to notice it in the moment, but there's a good chance you may not. But what you might notice is after having an interaction with somebody, or even seeing somebody in a particular kind of situation, maybe even watching a television show or a movie. Social media is actually huge with this. You'll see something and then you'll feel bad. You may not notice exactly what's going on, but you'll feel bad. Maybe you'll feel down. Maybe you'll feel irritated, depressed, anxious. Maybe you'll want to withdraw. Those are indicators that you've quite possibly compared yourself in some way. And this absolutely has gotten worse with social media. And when you notice that, noticing it is the first step. So noticing it is important. And then be able, or try actually, because it takes practice to be able to do this, but then try to notice what it is that you actually compared. Then you can do some reality testing around it. Is that really true? Do you know that to be true about that person or their life? Do you know that that thing for that person actually creates connection, happiness, or joy for their life? Because it may not. Like my envy over all the freedom from responsibility that she had, it actually made her feel lonely and fearful about what it meant for her life. But yet I spent all that time envying her lack of responsibility, envying her straight A's or nearly straight A's, when all reality is that because of some other issues, I don't know that I would have gotten straight A's because I didn't think that I could get straight A's, and so I didn't try very hard and put things off to the last minute, which is a whole other topic. Obviously, I did well enough to get out of school and grad school. But the point is, pay attention. Do some reality testing around that idea. Is it really true? And my guess is you're going to find that it may not be. And you may not know the answer for sure, but even that awareness is important because you're stopping that automatic connection, equating that a lack of responsibility means that she's completely happy. You could say, well, I don't know if she's happy, but it's possible that she may not be. So I'd really like to invite you to just try to pay attention to that. Notice how often you do that. Notice the impact it has on you. And then you can start paying attention and catching yourself when you're doing it. This is an important practice for healing, for believing in yourself, for trusting in yourself, and connecting to all the ways, all the things that you can be grateful for. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, you can send me an email at qanda at courageousjourneys.com, anything related to emotional healing, trauma, mental health, and I will answer here. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your reactions to this video. You can share that in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And click the little bell for notifications. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. It will help other people find this video and this channel. Together, we can create a world where we stop comparing ourselves, where we lose the shame that we hold on to, where we make it not only okay, but realize that it's healthy to talk about the things that create struggle, that there is no shame in struggle. So share in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.